Jesse. Super excited to talk to you about your brand, your YUY now, because I love this space. But before we get too deep into the brand side, tell me your personal franchise story. How do you even fall into franchising?
Sure. It's an interesting one. Thank you very much for having me, Nick. So I started the dog stop back in 2009, and it was purely kind of a side hobby business. Wasn't all that thrilled with the dog care offerings in my neighborhood and where I was living, which was pretty close to where I grew up. Had spent a lot of time volunteering, working in foster organizations, and knew a lot of people in the dog care community. And had heard from a lot of people that they wished there was something better. Through college and a few jobs after college, I traveled throughout the U.S. and seen some other concepts that had little bits and pieces of things that I thought were pretty cool. So decided to try a go of my own in entrepreneurship and opened the first dog stop location in 2009. Really just trying to improve upon what I thought were some of the biggest flaws and faults in the industry. And opened it up, thinking I was going to keep my full-time job, which was in real estate. And it quickly spiraled out of control into a full-time job. And, realized that we were really onto something, and opened up a second location about a year later. It grew even faster than the first one did. Repeated that again with a third location in 2012. And around that time, we had a ton of customers from all three locations coming to us saying like, "Hey, how do we get involved? This is awesome. We love the brand. Looks like you're having a lot of fun. Looks like, it's successful. Can we open one of these up in, our hometown, or can we help you expand this?" So hadn't really ever considered that. Just figured it was going to be something that we had a few of them here. And then kind of serendipitously, I happened to be sat at a wedding next to a family friend. I never really knew what he did, but knew of him. And at the time, he was a business consultant. He came in, spent a day or two with us just to help us try to improve our three locations. And after leaving, he said, we got to go have lunch. And we sit down. He was like, "Have you ever considered franchising?" I was like, "I haven't. I don't know anything about it." And he said, "Well, prior to being a business consultant, I spent 40 years in the franchise world, grew 2 different systems, over 400 units. And I'm not sure I've ever seen a more franchise business model than what you have here. Let's talk about it. Let me teach you about it." And that was really how it all started. Was very fortunate to have him as an early mentor who really impressed upon us the importance of building the foundation, going very, very slow at the beginning. I used to, tease him that it was terrible advice. And now that I look back on it, I know it was the best advice we ever got. Our first year, he said, "Sell 2 locations and then stop." And we sold 2 and got those 2 open. In the second year, he said, "You're going to sell 3 locations and then stop." We sold 3, got those 3 open. The third year came around, and I said, "Mark, if you tell us to sell 4 this year, I'm going to kill you. Like, we got to start selling." He said, "You're really going to be mad. We're going to sell 0. And I said, "0?" He said, "We're going to work with those first 5 until those first 5 love us and are super successful. And, we really know what we're doing, because, franchising is a whole different animal. You're not going to sell anymore." I listened to him, and that was the best advice, that anyone has ever given us, and really allowed us to build the foundation the right way, work with those first 5, and really learn how to be a franchisor. I'm sure you know this. The second you start franchising, you're no longer in the dog business or the pizza business or the whatever business. You're in the franchise business. And I think, a lot of people, it takes them sometimes too long or longer than it should to realize that. So that's the very abbreviated version of how this became a franchise.
I love that. Are you comfortable sharing Mark's last name?
Yeah, Mark Lando.
Okay.
He had originally been involved in, it was called the Athlete's Foot. It was, prior to kind of Foot Locker. And then he was involved in Sweets from Heaven, which was one of those self-serve candy. You fill up the bag, and they're in all the airports and malls, like that. So,
so typically, and I have a bunch of things that I want to unpack from your story, but typically I hear franchise consultant walks in. I'm like, okay, this is where the story turns into what's in it for me. I gotta applaud him. I don't know that we've ever run into each other, but what sound advice? Because most consultants today in franchising, especially for emerging brand, comes in and says, "You're going to sell 100," and sure, you can totally get there. But I've always said the slow, methodical route what it ends up doing is you go 2 and then 5 and then 7. And then now you can get to maybe 10. And then you can get to 20. And then over a 5-year period, you might have 30 to 40 locations. But the reality is the royalties that are being kicked off of that end up being more significant. And you're not chasing franchise fees to keep the lights on, because the dollars that are coming out are greater because you've made your franchisees successful, which in turn, then they validate, and then getting from 50 to 100 becomes so much easier. So what sound advice to get you there? How many units do you have open today?
So right now we have 25 open, but last year, 2021, we brought in an investor partner to help us grow a little bit, throw some fuel on the fire. So we actually have right now about 45 franchisees who are either in site selection, construction, or training. So we're going to double up here very quickly. And to your point, without that kind of stable foundation and learning and understanding, taking that type of a jump, I think that's what, puts a lot of franchisors in a really bad spot, or, ends up being the end of the brand, because, I can't imagine trying to do something like that without, the past 6 or 7 years of experience in supporting all the different personalities and franchisees out there.
The next question that I have, and it's going to start with, are you comfortable with me asking this? Because I think when we were at least growing up, you weren't allowed to ask a woman how old she was. I think now today you can't ask anybody how old they were, but am I allowed to ask you how old you were when you started in 2009?
Yeah, absolutely. In 2009, I was 27, going on 28.
Here's what I love about that. This is where the connections will start bridging. I started our company in 2008 at 27.
Okay.
And if I reflect backwards on 8, 9, and 10, and I mean this in the nicest way to the former version of myself. So if my former version of myself ever meets me, I was dumb enough in business that I didn't understand how bad the economy actually was during that time, which actually gave me an advantage, because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm growing a company, not thinking about, holy cow, I mean, this is bad. Were you in a similar? I mean, you're getting into heavy real estate in a really bottom out time of our lifetimes from an economic standpoint. How did you manage that mentally?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, I think the business was the outlet that I needed, given that everything I had known was real estate, and I was working on these very large, at the time they called them lifestyle developments, which was, these developers were spending, $1 billion building the live, work, and play, developing 10 city blocks, and we were working on those all over the country. And of course, the funding for those pretty much went away overnight. So it was nice to have, another outlet to kind of direct my energy and creativity. But one of the nice things about Pittsburgh, I don't know how much you know about Pittsburgh, but everybody kind of always says, we're somewhere between 10 and 15 years behind the times. And while certainly, the 08 to 2010 downturn was difficult everywhere, the kind of analogy, there's no hangover if you never went to the party. We never saw really any of the skyrocketing, real estate prices and valuations and things like that here in Pittsburgh. So I think we were hit a lot less. I also think that, coincidentally, these are all things, again, as you said, now that I look back, I understand them. But the pet care space that I chose, and of course, I had no idea that this was going to be such a safe, smart play and place to devote my energies and investment. But it has proven to be pretty recession, downturn, whatever you want to call it, resistant. I hesitate to say proof, because I don't think anything is recession proof, but I mean, if anything, people are shown to, potentially put off some of those big life decisions when things get tough, like, having kids or, making big investments, and the dogs become the kids and they spend more on their dogs. And, we've never really seen, whether it be the 08 to 2010, obviously the pandemic was very challenging for all businesses, especially ours, where, 45% of our revenues come from overnight boarding, and that went to pretty much zero during the early days of the pandemic. But we saw a very fast rebound, and it's just exploded ever since. So unbeknownst to me at that moment, I had chosen to jump into a relatively safe business during a very kind of uncertain economic time.
Well, I mean, look, it gives in my opinion, for businesses like mine and like yours, it gives us an advantage because once you know what turbulence feels like, it allows you to address it later on. And in my opinion, if there's an article 30 years from now written about the pet care industry and it talks about COVID, what it will say is yes, some of the services dwindled, but what happened is the increase in dog owners, the amount of human beings that said, "Oh, I'm at home. I'll get a pet," increased significantly. And so mentally, and even for a franchise owner, whatever the next one we go through is, you got to understand, like what that does is it goes like this, and then it goes higher.
Correct.
And so I think the biggest mistake that a franchisee makes is they don't come to the table with enough operating capital. They say, what's the investment look like? And that's what I have. It's like, no. And frankly, when I advise a franchisee, I'm like, look at a brand where you can afford 3 of them. If you can't afford 3 of them comfortably, then that's not the right investment for you, because you need that other funds. And obviously to scale at a pace, and you talked about going 1 to 2, and 2 had better success than 1. Learnings, probably real estate selection, everything else that goes into it. Mm-hmm. And so if you have the funds for a rainy day, then yes, COVID is a tough thing on all businesses, but it allows you to seize the opportunity on the other end of it.
Without a doubt. It a lot of good lessons learned, as with any business, but when you throw those kind of environmental factors in, you're forced to learn on the fly. But no, I agree. The capitalization of a franchise, I don't care what the business model is probably the most important. It was one of those lessons that we learned, early on, and luckily, when we only sold 2 the first year, and then the second year, we were really able to kind of lean in and help. And we've always been, I'd say, as gracious as physically possible with our franchisees, trying to give them the financial support, because at the end of the day, that's what we're here for, is to help them succeed in whatever capacity that may be. And like through the pandemic, that took the form of not charging royalties for 9 to 10 months, and me personally working with them and each individual landlord to get abatements and deferrals of rent and things like that. And just you do whatever you can to make sure everybody survives.
You're coming up on 15 years of doing this thing. And if we say, what's the story today about, we have 45 franchisees in real estate selection or in the process of build out, we have 25 units open. It sounds wonderful, but you've had to trek through things for 15 years to get to this point. If you reflect backwards, did that growth meet your expectations? Are you disappointed in it? Did it create a realities, and now are you comfortable with it? Kind of give the what's going on in the entrepreneur's mind.
Sure.
As you go through 15 years of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been some pretty wild swings in there in terms of where my headspace was. Originally, I never thought we'd have more than 1 of these, and then opened up a second and a third, and then I thought that was kind of it. We had a nice little thing going there, and it was under control. And then obviously this franchise bombshell gets dropped on me, and we decide to pursue that. And then initially, as we're putting together all the documents and working with the lawyers, and I go to my first IFA show, and I start to get all of these grand illusions of, we're gonna have 1,000 of you start listening to things. And then Mark says, all right, we're going to sell 2, we're going to sell 3. Then it was like, all right, we're going to go really slow here, and we get the 5, and then we're going to sell none. And right when we started feeling comfortable, and in 2016, 17, we decided, let's ramp this up a little bit, and we decided to sell 10, which for us obviously was a big jump, and we achieved that. We then hit the brakes again, thinking, all right, we're about to try to go from 5 to 15, which is a really big jump, and we learned how important it was to take the pause the first time. Let's pause again, and that ended up being really, again, unbeknownst to us at the time, we were pausing right before the pandemic came along. So, that ended up being a very good thing. So I would say, all in all, I mean, I'm very, very pleased and happy with where we are. I'm very excited for what the future holds. I've never wanted to or dreamed of being the biggest. When it comes to pets, I think, you have to focus on being the best. And I really like anything, I think it's really hard to be the biggest and the best, just because to be the biggest, you have to go really, really fast. And it's hard to have that quality control, I think, when you're just churning things out and replicating processes so quickly that you don't have time to really dive in and make sure that what you're replicating is the right process. So, I'm very happy and proud of where we are at the moment. I'm really excited for the future here, getting to double up here probably in the next 12 months. And I think we'll probably, hit that magical 75 number probably sometime by the end of 2024, early 2025, and then hopefully cross the century mark by, end of 25, early 26. So, I've kind of, that earlier version of myself that thought there was, a 700 or 1,000 or 2,000, units in this is long gone. Not something that I'm all that interested in. So yeah, I mean, like I said, there's been ebbs and flows to it. And I think that's pretty normal through the course of anyone's business journey. But super, super excited about where we currently stand and the team we have.
What's your take on corporate locations right now? Will you continue to scale those?
I don't think so. So we, at the moment, we have 6 of them, and there's 5 here in the Pittsburgh market, and then we have 1 just over the border into Ohio, Boardman, Ohio. It's about an hour away. I personally think, and through our experience of having to step in once or twice and help manage a franchise location from very far away, 1,000 miles away, I think that it is very important to be kind of an owner on the ground and part of the community. With any business, obviously, it's kind of hard to manage from afar, but especially when you're caring for people's pets, I think it's so important. Everything that we do is about building that trust and that confidence. And, if you were to walk in, to a new dog stop in Atlanta and come to find out that the owner lives, 1,000 miles away or however far it is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, it's kind of like a strike one right out of the gate. That's kind of like, who am I really dealing with here? And I don't think most people are looking for this big corporate entity to care for their kid effectively. They want somebody local on the ground. So maybe 1 or 2 more corporate stores here in Pittsburgh, but we are primarily focused on franchise growth.
Yeah, I mean, from a franchise candidate standpoint, I will say I respect you having 6. I agree. Way out of market, an hour away, you're not gonna be seen at local baseball events, and you're not going to be ingrained in the community the way that you could be in Pittsburgh. I like that you have 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 locations is one of yours corporately owned, because what that also means is you're cash flowing the business through the corporate entity, which for a franchisee, that means the support that I can get from you is going to be greater than, say, someone that has 1 corporate location, not enough cash flow to support me in the space. So as I'm looking at your brand, for what it's worth, I think that's a huge asset that should be played up in the way that you're positioning things, because you're saying not only are we putting our money where our mouth is, but we're also building our team through the cash that we're able to pull from the corporate unit. I see that as a huge advantage for what it's worth.
And you're spot on. Location 1 paid for location 2, location 1 and 2 paid for location 3. The whole franchise business has been supported from day 1 from the corporate cash flow. And arguably, most importantly, I think that the biggest benefit, to me as I build the team, and more importantly to our franchisees, is, the support that franchisees get. I never want to be the brand where, your franchise support representative shows up and 6 months ago they worked at Pizza Hut and 2 years ago they worked at Burger King, and they're flipping through manuals trying to figure out this business just like you are. So all of my corporate support staff have worked their way up through, my franchise support staff have worked their way up through corporate stores. They started in the back of the house. They became an assistant manager, a general manager, a regional manager, and now they're supporting franchisees. And those are obviously the best people to help franchisees run a store, because they successfully ran corporate stores for me, and they know this business arguably as well as anyone. So
that's right.
A lot of benefits to having that corporate footprint.
Are you making an earnings claim in item 19?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you mind sharing what that is?
In terms of just kind of gross averages across the board. So
Yeah.
our average unit volume right now, and obviously a lot of new stores kind of dragging it down a little bit, but we're at about 925 average unit volumes. If you look at the mature stores, though, we're much closer to that 1.3, 1.4 number.
Are you breaking those out as separate line items in item 19?
Oh yeah. So I tried to, that's one of the things that drives me crazy about franchising, all the rules and regulations. And, it started with the corporate stores and into franchising, try to be as transparent as possible. And just, I find it incredible that so many people are able to make this big leap of faith and investment with the limited information that we're legally allowed to provide them. So we really have tried very, very hard over the years to put as close to a P&L as our lawyers will let us put into the agreement so they can see the actual financial performance of every individual location that's open. So yes, so now we break it out by location, top line sales, square footage, number of kennels. We try to give everybody as much because we are unique in the respect that we're not cookie cutter. Every location looks totally different. We have a variety of different sizes. We try to do whatever we can to build a location that suits the needs of the community, but arguably more importantly, the franchisee and what they're able to pull off.
I mean, those numbers are great. I mean, I'll say from as an outsider, as I look through your site and such, when I'm looking at an opportunity, I mean, I tend to look for the exact same things that most buyers would look for. One is, what's the vision of the leadership, and this should open up some opportunities as you reflect backwards on how you position your story. I want to see more of your story. I mean, your story is phenomenal. That should be a part of your why you, why now, and positioning. And ultimately, I'm going to write you a check. Like, you're my guy, and I want to follow your model. And frankly, if I'm getting into this, yes, I care about volumes to some extent. Yes, I'm curious on profitability, but I want to know what is the pathway for me to get to 6 units too, because I need to build this at scale.
Sure.
Beyond that, point of differentiation in the product, I would totally play up that not every location looks and feels the same. That was one of the beautiful things of Mellow Mushroom as a pizza brand that was trying to find its way in the marketplace. They said, hey, franchisees, you find the right real estate. As long as the menu stays consistent, that's our holy grail. Everything else can be bendable. And I think that turns into a point of differentiation on the product side. I also, as an outsider, the pet grooming services, the amount of daycare that we've tried having our dog get groomed at, and they're like, we don't have full grooming services. I thought that was fascinating. And then it's just, can I open in the market that I want to open in? What does validation look like, and what's the cost to get in, and how much can I make? And so you have all this sound stuff. And to an outsider, if I'm putting you into the category of what exists in doggy daycare, for you to create these even flows, I think you actually have a leg up on competition that you're probably not taking as much credit for in the way that you're positioning your story, for what it's worth.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That is, I agree, but it's difficult because you only have so much time, and I've heard conflicting opinions on how much time people actually spend scrolling through websites in this. But what I do is, in our franchise sales process, the moment a lead comes in, obviously we have an incredible sales team, and Brandon Nielsen heads it up for us, who's been selling franchises for 20 plus years. But I get involved very, very early on, which everybody seems to really like and thinks is unique. So you have your intro call where he kind of walks through the process and what the next several weeks will look like, goes through the business model, and kind of shares a lot of the things that you just mentioned. The second or third connection that we have with the franchisee, I actually have a 30-minute call. I just did one at 9 a.m. this morning. We call it the CEO call because I think it's very important for them to hear my story and to connect with me, and vice versa. I want to make sure I know who's on the other end of these applications and everything, and make sure that people understand who we are, what we do, why we do it, and that they buy into it. Because I often talk about there's a big spectrum of interested parties out there. You get the one end of the spectrum who are just crazy dog lovers, who are likely not going to be able to be successful running a business for a variety of different reasons, but mostly because they get so tied up in each individual dog that they lose sight of the fact that there's 100 dogs there and there's a business to run and whatnot. And then the other end of the spectrum, I get 10 phone calls a week from, kind of the Wall Street private equity type of people who want to get into this, who don't like dogs, don't care about, they're never going to be able to deliver the customer service and build the community and the goodwill that is necessary when all you care about is the P&L and the bottom line. So while there's definitely a big, middle ground there on that spectrum, I like to get involved very, very early to try to flush that out and make sure that we know who we're dealing with.
Well, I mean, that's going to be hugely beneficial towards whenever you make the decision to exit, because what you'll have is you'll have brand advocates that are scaling their businesses. I think, a lot of franchisees get into business not understanding scale. They think one unit and I'm going to make the wealth that I want for my family. But the way that you build wealth, and in my opinion, you definitely have to have the grit and the hustle attached to the P&L. And the grit and the hustle, in your case, you have to have some passion for the pet industry, so that you will take care of your customers and you will do the right thing, and make sure that you're building that culture with the staff. And that's where it's like the Jesse way has to continue no matter what market you're in. And that's where the vision of the founder CEO plays tremendous role in whether a brand can be successful or not. So if someone is now watched our discussion and they've hit this point, and they are a ghost, and for what it's worth, time on site, not significant. Time before inquiry, all franchisees were over 1,000 that we've spoken with, that we do on PR services for. We're using that as an opportunity to understand the buyer journey. 6.4 months from impression to inquiry. So they are coming back in a process, and that number hasn't changed since we started doing this at the beginning of last year. And so there's a value point in there. Lower investment goes a little bit faster, higher investment a little bit slower. So think about that you do have ghosts on your website who are looking at you, maybe don't have a YUI now. Maybe there's not enough turbulence in their personal life or career life to make this change, but they are watching you. So the ghost is watching this right now. You don't know who they are. They haven't filled out the form. What do you want them to know about your opportunity?
No, I mean, it's interesting. From our own internal research, we're almost exactly dead on with that too. And that's 6 to 7 months from, when they say they first connected with us until we have a signed agreement. So that's good to validate that. As I spoke about that spectrum, that's the type of person we're looking for. This is not something, we've intentionally made a pivot over the last few years to move away from kind of owner operators. So this is something that, we would prefer you keep doing whatever your day job is. This is something that our really successful owners have proven that you can manage and thrive with, somewhere between 8 and 12 hours a week of attention towards it. Of course, there's some spikes in that, around the opening and training weeks, but this is just such a booming industry. Every market that we look at, the demand so far outpaces the supply. And, I'm sure most dog owners out there, that'll resonate with them. If you don't book your, holiday boarding stay 4 months in advance, you're going to be, calling around to a lot of places, and unfortunately probably having to either find a friend or family to watch the dog, or, in the event that you're new to the market, leave your dog somewhere that you don't feel great about. So tremendous opportunity. Every major market is available. Pittsburgh's really the only one that is sold out. So we're just super excited about finding the right people to help us grow this brand. And to your point, we're certainly looking for folks who have the vision to open several of them. We don't require anyone to purchase, more than one upfront, but of course, we want folks who are coming into this looking to help us build something a little bit bigger, 2 or 3 stores, if not more.
Well, I think there's a huge other advantage that anybody that's watching this should listen to, and that's you've tried this and tested it and failed at this for 15 years to perfect this model. And now you're hitting this scale point, but that was a 15-year story in the making to get to this point. And so there are plenty of human beings that are thinking about, can I actually start this business on my own? And you've done a lot of the homework for them. So if you want to spend the next 15 years chasing your tail, go ahead and do it, or you cut it off and go with you guys. So
and you it's interesting because this industry, I think you're spot on. There's a lot of people who I don't want to say mistaken their love for the pets as, oh, I can do this, and I think when it comes to a lot of other, I spend just as much time in the sales process trying to talk people out of joining the franchise as I do into it. Because at the end of the day, everyone thinks they want to own their own business. Everyone thinks they want to be an entrepreneur. And sure, having the support of a franchisor really limits a lot of the potential risk. And helps you, understand and figure out how to succeed much faster. But I always say to people, everything that I'm telling you, pretend this wasn't a dog care business, pretend it was a pizza business, or pretend it was a transmission business, or whatever it is. Would you still want to do this? Because all of these things I'm telling you about, the heartache of employee management and financial administration, all of these things, pets, dogs in particular, can make people overlook a lot of red flags that if it was any other business, they'd be like, oh, this isn't for me, I don't want to do this. But because it's dogs, they're like, yeah, I'm just not going to worry about that, I just want to play with dogs. So that's a big one. But so far this year, we've had 3 individuals who have come to our Discovery Day. And we hold a Discovery Day once a month, and we have in our history about a 95% close rate from Discovery Day, because we don't invite most people who want to come, because at the end of the day, I don't want to waste anybody's time or money if we see anything that we're not concerned about. But so far this year, we've had 3 individuals who came to Discovery Day, and as they were leaving, shook my hand and said, Jesse, I have to tell you, I came here totally on a mission to steal as much as I could. I had already filed the paperwork to open my own one of these. It was going to be called, Nick's Doggy Daycare. I've gone to 3 of your competitors before you and did the same thing with them. I'm signing a franchise agreement with you because I just realized I can't do this on my own. And everything that you provide to us is what I need to be successful. And how quickly can we start?
Those are the stories you need to press down. And I think they're like, do those happen across franchising? Rarely. Yeah. Because most, and look, I'll give you a quick story. We're talking to a franchisee. He's a franchisee of Footprints Floors. Mm-hmm. He always wanted to own a restaurant guy, restaurant general manager. And he said he went to Discovery Days, and it happened multiple times where culturally he just didn't feel aligned with the leadership. And he said, I'm not opening up a restaurant. And so the restaurant industry lost someone good because of the culture that presents there. I think most franchisors treat a discovery process as we're looking to reject or accept you, versus how do we make sure that the relationship is aligned? And I can tell you, based on this conversation and the way that you're approaching it and the way that you're approaching franchising, if someone gets to meet you and hear what you just talked to me about, it will say that there are good ones in franchising. And it seems like you're doing all the right things. So
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, for Jesse, I'm Nick. This was another Meet the Zor. Jesse, thank you for all the time. I loved hearing your story. Look forward to hearing where the story goes from here on out.
Thanks so much, Nick. Talk soon.
Take care.